Hi, we continue with Unit 4. This time we focus on Lesson 2. In Lesson 2, we cover the intelligence agenda of nation-states, the legislation that enabled intelligence reform in the US, and IT-based analysis, the pros and the cons of it. And we look at 3 lessons from Iraq and weapons of mass destruction. And then we conclude. The intelligence agenda of nation states is very important to the US. By the same token, the intelligence agenda of the US is very important to other states. Therefore, the primary targets are nation states. The US interest in nation states varies according to the level of the relationship the US has with any given state and the nature of that state's activities and how the US views and evaluates those activities. States that sponsor terrorism are of special interest to the US, as are states that support activities of terrorist or hostile non-state actors, such as Iran and its sponsorship with Hezbollah. WMD, terrorism, crime, narco-trafficking, criminal finance, cybercrime, all of these are activities that take place within nation states. These activities are frequently abetted by governmental and or private industry corruption and collusion. Transnational criminal business enterprises, also known as transnational cartels, are of special interest to the US, particularly when these organizations become the state within the state or have open support by that state. The National Intelligence Priorities Framework summarizes the collection priorities of the USAIC. Today, these priorities are China, Iran, Russia, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. The National Intelligence Program spans several federal departments and the CIA. It is focused on protecting US citizens, safeguarding the economy from outside threats, and fostering continued economic growth. The National Military Program combined all intelligence agencies of the military under the Military Joint Military Intelligence Program and also the Technical Intelligence and Related Activities Group. Open activities of nation states such as the economy, military, social, diplomatic, political, cultural, artistic, anything that is open are very easy to monitor and do intelligence on. On the contrary, covert actions are not so clearly identifiable because they happen within closed circles. Therefore, these actions are of major concern to the US. In looking at nation states, we focus on 3 issues. The levers of power, that is the capabilities and intentions of states. The capabilities are easiest to collect and analyze because they are in the open. Intentions are more difficult because they happened within the very close-knit circles of particular states. The post-Cold War decreased the emphasis on military power, increases the emphasis on economic power. Today, along with economic power, we need to focus on cyber power and cyber security. Mirror imaging is the intellectual trap that is often used to assess another nation. Mirror imaging ascribes our goals and drives to the nation we are interested in. Believing they care about the same things we do distorts our perceptions, beliefs, and responses to other nations. For example, a person the US sees as a moderate may be viewed as a radical in other nations. and vice versa. What may be a radical in other nations may be viewed as a moderate in the US. Internal stability distortion relates to how a country presents itself to the outside world, as internally stable or not. Therefore, is the nation-state's public supportive of that nation's agenda? Internal support to a nation's agenda is not an accurate measure of stability. For example, China and North Korea stamp out dissent. Therefore, they present to the outside world an image that they are stable. However, thanks to social media, we are seeing that there are regions in China where stability is not as strong as the Chinese present it to the outside world. The Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba totally misread Cuba's solidarity behind Castro at the time. Who the leadership of a nation state is and how that leadership acts is extremely important, because leadership is a key component in assessing a nation state. This is why the CIA has a branch that studies and produces assessments on foreign leaders and other key decision makers in politics, economic, science, technology, social, and cultural fields. Regional stability is very important because one of the most important roles of intelligence is to provide early warning of a possible regional crisis, both to the immediate nation at risk and to other nations around it in the region. Intelligence can also be used to diffuse a regional crisis by helping a nation understand the perception each nation has of the others. For me personally, regional stability today needs to be a daily concern of intelligence and security analysts, because we are seeing how regional stability is changing practically on a day-to-day basis. Failed states are those who experience a breakdown in the legitimacy of the government and its ability to maintain control over its territory. Honduras is a prime example of this today. But there can also be failed regions within a non-failing state. For example, the region of Tierra Caliente in Michoacan, which is a state in Mexico. Other characteristics include that the government is no longer deemed legitimate by its people. There is a faltering economy and a collapse of public services. There is also a factionalized population, and there are social factors and crises that lead to the population displacement both internally or externally. There is also a largely independent security apparatus who frequently does as it pleases, and there is a suspension of basic rights. When talking of rights, we need to be very aware of the fact that basic rights are different in each country. Not every country has the basic rights that the US has. Concurrently, there is the law enforcement breakdown throughout the country, and this makes the nation state a magnet for rogue and criminal groups. The purpose of intelligence reform in the US was to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the intelligence community, and by doing this, respond to intelligence improprieties or failures. It was also to refocus the intelligence community requirements to evolving threats and security needs. The truth is, the intelligence community will never reach the end of reforms. There will always be periodic reviews and organizational changes as situation changes, threat changes, and intelligence requirements change as a consequence. The issues in intelligence reform needed to address the structure of the intelligence community, who were the parts and major players in the intelligence community, and also the intelligence process, who was responsible for the process and how the process was carried out. It also involved the fact that, that intelligence issues and security issues do not stand independently on their own. They are all interrelated, and therefore they must be approached together. It is a fact that if you alter a structure and the process continued without any changes, the process that supports that structure, all of this is little more than rearranging the boxes on an organizational chart. Changing the process without changing the structure will also be meaningless, as the old structure will resist the new processes. We all know that change is one of the most difficult things for human beings to do, and probably the most difficult thing to achieve through legislation alone. Two commissions played a key role in the reforms of the U.S. intelligence community. The Rockefeller Commission responded to investigation and findings on the CIA activities within the United States. The commission was formed after revelations about improper or illegal CIA activities. It is known as the Family Jewels Report because secrets that the CIA kept totally under wraps came to the public's knowledge. The commission focused largely on proposals to prevent a reoccurrence of CIA involvement in domestic operations, such as the surveillance of political dissidents within the U.S. between 1950 and the mid-1990s, and also the Watergate affair. The commission directed the CIA to perform only foreign intelligence activities. It was released to the public in 2007 by the Director of National Intelligence pursuant to the provisions of the Freedom of Information Act. There is the 9/11 Commission, the National Commission on Terrorist Attacks upon the United States. The 9/11 failure to connect the dots were used as an opportunity to push for intelligence reform, whether or not related to the attacks. The commission sought to determine if the 9/11 attacks occurred because of a specific intelligence lapses, and if so, who was responsible. Also, the commission thought to improve the intelligence community's ability to deal with terrorism overall, but most importantly, to prevent future terrorist attacks against the continental United States and abroad. Emanating from all of that was the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004. This act created the Office of the Director of National Intelligence in 2005. The creation of this office separated the DNI and the Director of Central Intelligence, the Director of the CIA. The DNI heads the whole of the intelligence community. However, the act created serious gaps in the DNI. The gaps are between the DNI's responsibilities, which are many, and the authority of the DNI, which is very limited. As a consequence of the act, the Director of Central Intelligence is no longer the leader of the intelligence community, because the CIA is now one among 16 intelligence agencies in the U.S. The Director of National Intelligence does not run an agency. The office of the DNI is not an agency. The DNI concentrates on a community-wide role. There are two issues with this. The DNI has no statutory authority over any agency, and the DNI has no budget execution authority over the National Intelligence Program. Focus on budget execution authority. Is the DNI a success or a failure? Supporters claim that the DNI, freed from direct responsibility for any agency, can focus on information sharing, and that decreases the likelihood of an attack. Critics see no connection between the new structure and what is needed to prevent an attack. Critics view the office of the DNI as an additional bureaucratic layer without any changes in how terrorism is addressed. Also, the Act created some gaps. 70 to 85% of the intelligence agencies and their budgets are under the control of the Secretary of Defense. As said before, not the DNI. The CIA struggles over control for covert action and HUMANT, which are key components of intelligence collection and analysis, and intelligence collection and analysis is the responsibility of the CIA. The National Counterterrorism Center has authority to engage in strategic operational planning. This strategic operational planning means that the director of the center has direct access to the President of the United States. The U.S. intelligence community operates under the need to share basis. However, there are still stovepipes. Stovepiping occurs when agencies in similar lines of work, such as collection or analysis, compete with one another to a wasteful and harmful degree. Most affected are signals intelligence, geospatial intelligence, and human intelligence. To eliminate stovepipes, the community moved from the need to know to the need to share. However, the full success of need to share is yet to come because there still exist stovepipes within the agencies. Therefore, the challenge in eliminating stovepipes means that the DNI has to take advantage of the expertise of each stovepipe, the intelligence that each agency holds on to for dear life, while the DNI have to ensure coordination and sharing across the whole community. Another issue in need to share is the redundancy. Redundancy is the external duplication that stems from two fundamental operating principles of the intelligence community. Was that every policymaker has a distinct intelligence need, and also that competitive analysis exists within the community. This means an agency wants to do intelligence on a given issue, but another agency already has done the intelligence on that issue. Therefore, there is redundancy. IT-based analytical process has pros and cons. The pros include that this type of analysis provides agility in working with large amounts of data. Analysis is faster in the process and therefore gives quicker results. There is a caveat in here. Is the program in the computer capable of doing the analysis, or is a human brain necessary at some level to either do the analysis or enhance on that analysis? This is a critical question in this issue. IT also brings together different and physically distant analysts to work on pressing issues. This is really very good because different points of view are critical to make an intelligence actionable intelligence. And IT also increases information sharing provided there is not a stovepipe. The con is the security of the system. These systems are very large, have too many sources, are operated by too many people, and all of these factors makes the systems susceptible to hacking because there is a tremendous amount of incoming data And this data is very difficult to vet and to analyze and to be exploited, or to have some liquor be cooked in time. The lessons learned from Iraq and weapons of mass destruction regarding warning, 9/11 taught us as loudly as possible to make sure policymakers understand the gravity of a situation. Iraq's WMD taught us to be sure of your facts before you warn. Regarding information sharing, 9/11 taught that information must be shared as broadly as possible so connections can be made. Iraq's WMD taught us not to share information that is not thoroughly vetted, can be verified, and that may or might not be credible. Regarding connecting the dots, 9/11 taught us to connect the dots. Iraq's WMD taught us not to connect too many dots to create a false picture. Conclusion. The Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act was the most significant legislation affecting the USAIC since the National Security Act of 1947. The Intelligence Reform Act established the position of the Director of National Intelligence. This position carries more responsibility to coordinate the nation's intelligence efforts than those formerly possessed by the Director of Central Intelligence, the DCI. However, the authority of the DNI over the intelligence community is limited. Observers are divided over the success of the DNI position and the success of the office of the DNI. A widespread perception is that coordinative mechanisms and authorities, as currently established, are inadequate to the goal of creating a more flexible and agile intelligence effort. Congress has monitored the work of the DNI, but given the absence of enacted intelligence authorization legislation since 2004, that oversight has been informal. So far, no substantive reforms are being considered to the office of the DNI or the rest of the intelligence community in the wake of the Snowden leaks. Most proposals are focused on the security clearance process. How this process happens, who does the clearing, who is cleared, at what level of clearance, and for how long will clearances be held. This is still a work in progress. What did we cover in Lesson 2? We covered the intelligence agenda of nation states, the legislation that enabled the reform of the U.S. intelligence community, IT-based analysis, and the pros and cons, and 3 lessons learned from Iraq and weapons of mass destruction. Thank you for attending the lecture. We will meet again in Unit 5. I wish you continued success in your studies. We are in the middle of the course. I look forward to continuing working with you. Thank you.